Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Notes from Underground is a novel written by renowned Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoyevsky, and it was published in 1864. It is set in St. Petersburg and is a realist novel that focuses on the lives of real people and the effect that society has on these people. For example, city dwellers, prostitutes, students, and labourers. The novel is also a response to the rational egoism of Chernyshevsky's 1863 novel What is to be Done, which presents the idea that life can be perfected if everyone uses reason and knows what is in their best interest. As we'll explore in greater depth shortly, the Underground Man believes that this does not actually work, as it misaligns with the inherent human desire for freedom and choice. Dostoevsky preferred a return to traditional Russian values like personal responsibility, religion, brotherly love, and focusing on the family, rather than seeking universal social laws to explain and govern human behaviour, as it ignores human individuality, complexity, and freedom. The novel is split into two parts. The first gives us an insight into the mind of the Underground Man and his critique on emerging Western rationalism, and the second part, entitled Apropos of the Wet Snow, is set roughly 20 years prior and outlines the Underground Man's interaction with three main people: the officer, his old school friend, Sverkov, and Lisa, the prostitute. One of the Underground Man's most fundamental ideas is that freedom is much more important to us than reason, rationality, and knowing what is in our best interest. He criticises how science views man as nothing more than a piano key. By codifying our actions and confining us to the laws of nature, we lose our freedom, our essence, and our individuality. This is similar to Jean-Paul Sartre's statement, a famous French existentialist, that all materialist philosophies create man as an object, a stone. We are told by science that we are governed by the laws of nature and that our lives would be best if only we could discover some formula to tell us the best course of action in any situation. However, the Underground Man disagrees strongly with this, as he believes instead that human beings are unknowable, and even if we did know everything that was in our best interests through science and reason, we would not actually follow this, as there is something much, much more important to us even than this. He states that the most advantageous of advantages, the thing that we value more than anything, even more than the best course of action, is freedom. It is one's own free, independent desire, one's own whims, however unbridled. All man needs is independent volition. It is the desire to be free to desire, even if it is irrational and against our best interests. We do not want to be confined to desiring only what is best for us. It is important to us that we do stuff as free beings, rather than having science and reason tell us what is best for ourselves. And this is why people sabotage themselves and do not always do even what they know is best for them. This idea of self-sabotage is very important, and the Underground Man states the reason why he perhaps sometimes wants to swerve to the side is precisely that he is condemned to follow that path. Here he is referring to when we have a task to do or a goal to achieve, we don't actually like feeling stuck on that path, even if it is what is best for us, and so we enjoy swerving from the path and falling behind and distracting ourselves, and so on. He goes on, what we desire most is to have the right to desire what is extremely stupid, and not to be duty-bound to desire only what is intelligent. And relating back to this aversion to achieving our goals, he asks, isn't man perhaps so passionately fond of destruction and chaos that he instinctively fears achieving his goal? Perhaps he only likes building it and not living in it. Perhaps our perverse attraction to destruction and chaos is why we don't always do even what we know is best for us, and why we fail to achieve some of our goals, even though we know that we could have achieved them if we had just stuck to the path. But being stuck to a single path is what we hate most, and so it is our innate tendency to fall from it and never actually reach what we set out to reach. The freedom to do this is much more important to us than actually achieving the end goal. It is this independent volition that preserves what is most precious and most important to us, our personality and our individuality. Reason is deceptive because it promises us more than it can give. Reason satisfies our rational faculty, but there is much more to us than just that. So even living a life of reason and egoism will leave us feeling empty and incomplete, as there are other areas like emotional connection, humility, and compassion that we need to fulfill and develop as well. A second key idea in the novel is that the underground man is aware of how we actually derive an irrational type of pleasure in suffering. In the novel, the motif of the toothache and the accompanying groans show the pleasure that the person gets out of suffering and imposing their own suffering onto others. This is an attitude of spite. If they are suffering, they want others to feel their suffering too. He explains that he himself knows perfectly well that his groans won't bring him any relief. Better than anyone else, he knows that he is only irritating and overtaxing himself and everyone else for nothing. The underground man even suffers from this himself. He writes, "If you ask why I mangled myself like this, the answer is because I was terribly bored, idly sitting around, and so I indulged in all manner of capers. I used to imagine adventures for myself. I invented a life so that I could at least exist somehow. Once or even twice, I wanted to force myself to fall in love." The key idea here is that man will never renounce suffering, as he enjoys a weird sort of pleasure out of it. Life is suffering, albeit chosen suffering. We choose to suffer, especially over trivial matters like a toothache, out of spite and a perverse enjoyment of the pain. The next main idea is that intelligence can be a curse. The conscious man is paralyzed in the sense that he is not a man of action because he sees the flaws in each and every course of action and thus can never fully embrace and follow any of them. Along with this, he struggles to create an identity for himself. In everything that he does, he feels like he is acting, lying to himself and playing a game, and so he never feels certain, fulfilled or complete. He writes that an intelligent man cannot make himself anything, and that it's only fools who manage to do that. Furthermore, he states that to be excessively conscious is a disease, and that in order to begin to act, you must be completely sure in advance that there are no residual doubts whatsoever. However, it is the nature of the conscious man to see all the potential flaws in each course of action. They realize that whatever course of action they choose, it will not result in their happiness. He thinks that ordinary men are able to confidently embody justice because they do not think twice about its origins and assume it will result in the best outcome. But the conscious man sees through this. He also realizes that his anger will have no effect on changing what he is angry about, so there's no point in taking any action about it. Also, they see that the rewards of any action are only fleeting and not lasting, so why engage in any action at all? He exclaims that the best thing is to do nothing, better conscious inertia. A conscious yet indecisive man whose mind is always changing is better and less dangerous than a man with a fixed mind that is not able to change. The second part is entitled Apropos of the Wet Snow. His interaction with the officer begins when the underground man is walking down the street and the officer casually shoves him aside in the street. This fleeting interaction and disregard of the underground man torments him, and he becomes obsessed with the idea of revenge. He spends the next few months following the man and planning his revenge. He will not move aside for the officer so that a confrontation will arise and the officer must acknowledge his existence. The underground man spends months preparing and buys expensive clothes to appear well off to the man. He is so starved of social interaction that he has become obsessed over the smallest and most insignificant of interactions. As we saw before, he wants to act but takes so long and overthinks everything. He is paralysed by his indecisiveness and his over-analysis of trivial situations. He finally gathers the courage to bump into the officer, but again, the officer dismisses him and brushes him aside. This torments the underground man even further. Here we are shown the alienation the underground man feels and how he can never achieve genuine human contact with anyone, and his interactions are always very artificial and unnatural. Next is the underground man's interaction with Zverkov. The underground man meets Simonov and 2 other old schoolmates at an apartment to get ready for a farewell dinner for Zverkov, another old school friend who is leaving to become an officer. None of his schoolmates really like his company, but the underground man offers to contribute money to the dinner so that they will respect him. Even though the underground man despises Zverkov, he takes his servants' money and is obsessed with the idea of winning over his old classmates at the dinner with a profound and enlightening speech. Ever since he was young, the underground man has not had a real relationship or connection with anyone, since even at school he was disliked, and so he craves power and recognition as he has been ignored and stepped over his whole life. Hence why he fantasizes about winning over his classmates. Even though he despises all of them, he is still obsessed with trying to please them and be admired by them. His plan ultimately fails and he achieves nothing significant at the gathering. Finally is the underground man's interaction with Lisa. After having spent the night with Lisa, the underground man launches into a moralizing speech about the shamefulness of her profession as a prostitute. He tries to rescue her from this dangerous and unfulfilling job. His speech brings Lisa to tears and he reassures her that she can come to him anytime for help. He also enjoys the feeling of power that he gains from seeing his manipulation of Lisa's emotions, although he does say that he genuinely believes what he is saying to her. However, when Lisa arrives at his house the next day, he is overcome by shame. He manipulated her and wanted to humiliate her just as he was humiliated by his old schoolmates. He is scared of not appearing as the great hero he initially presented himself to be. In fact, it is he who is in need of help, not Lisa. He bursts out sobbing and once again he is a humiliated wreck. The underground man cannot understand Lisa's genuine liking of him, and he is stunned by her noble rejection of the money that he forces into her hand in a final attempt to humiliate her. She is presented as the noble one, and he, once again, is left distraught and filled with regret. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to like if you found the video useful and subscribe for more videos. See you next time on Feeling Philosophical, and goodbye.